your gray books, and there is an opportunity on there to request a training for your staff also. Or if you're involved in any groups who would like to have like a speaker, a legal talk for a family meeting or group, we're happy to do that as well. I think that was about it about me. So we're here to give you all the updates for the Medicaid numbers for 2025. I would like to introduce our lead Medicaid attorney, Mike Casterlow. He has been with us since right during the pandemic, right after the, right,
Right.
2021?
Yeah, it's been about
Okay,
just over 3 years. So.
just over 3 years. And you can read there about Mike. He has his Bachelor of Arts in Government from Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia and got his law degree from Elon. He grew up in Greensboro, went to Virginia for school, and then came back to Greensboro. His specialty is guardianships, elder care navigation, and I see Eileen on this call, and they are partners for elder care navigation, and that does include Medicaid approvals as well as all legal documents. And that is, we do a care coordination and legal advising all in one clump called elder care navigation. And he also does estate planning and long-term care planning. He has an affinity for working with LGBTQIA individuals and families as well. So thank you to Mike. I'm going to hand it over to him. I did want to share with you that Ellen was going to be with us today, but because of the weather, she was not able to join us. So unfortunately, all you big, huge Ellen fans, she is our Medicaid benefits specialist. She is not here, but I know there's been some questions that have come in that are specific to Ellen and what she knows. So some of you are going to be advised at the end of the call to reach out directly to Ellen for some questions that you might have. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Let's get right into the updated Medicaid numbers. Everybody get out your magnet.
Thank you, Cynthia. So yeah, I apologize. You get the runner-up person in the office, so Ellen can't be here, so you get me. But I'm going to try to give you as much good information as possible today. Um, so, so we are going to prepare a new magnet for you that's going to have all the updated numbers for you, and Cynthia's going to take care of getting those sent out to everyone who signs up saying that they would like one. So I'm going to just dive into the numbers and just kind of let you know what's been updated and what they mean. So the first big change is the community spouse resource allowance. So that's the amount that the spouse who's not needing care or not needing long-term care is allowed to keep of the countable assets. So the minimum has increased from 30,000 up to 31,584. So if a person's assets, or if a couple's assets, excuse me, are below the 31,584, the community spouse automatically gets to keep everything, right? Because they're not at the minimum yet. The maximum has increased from $154,000 to $140 to $157,920. So there's about a little over almost $4,000 more that they get to keep of them at the maximum level. And so that's very helpful in the sense that for folks who do have quite a bit in assets, at least the community spouse gets to keep up to that 157 number. So if we're talking about $200,000 in assets, we divide that in half. The community spouse automatically gets to keep 100,000, and then the remaining 100,000 would have to be spent down. The income allowance for the community spouse has also increased. And what the income allowance is, that's the amount of income the community spouse is allowed to have to either of the spouse who's needing care. They're allowed to get some of that spouse's income to get them up to a certain amount. So right now the max is 3948, excuse me. So they can get enough of the spouse who's needing care's income to get them up to that max amount of income if their income is not already there. I will caveat that with typically we can't get them up to that maximum number unless they have something like a mortgage that the community spouse needs to continue to pay. If there is no mortgage on the house, then the community spouse can only get the minimum amount, which right now is 2555. So if they're not already at 2555, the community spouse's income is not already there, we can give them enough of the ill spouse's income to get them to 2555. But if there's a mortgage, then we could get them all the way, or at least close to 3948 in income. The standard utility allowance, excuse me, for the community spouse. This is the amount that can be used to pay for utilities and that kind of thing, is 620. So it went up from 585 to $620 a month. The maximum value for a personal residence. So this is the amount that the personal residence can be worth in order to stay non-countable. So it can be up to $730,000. So you can own your home site, your personal residence, up to $730,000 in value. So if it's over that, the overage is countable. So you can still say that the 730 is non-countable, but anything over that becomes part of the countable assets. And then the biggest change by far is that the gift penalty divisor has increased substantially. So so for years and years and years, it's been $7,110 a month. So every time someone gives $7,110, that equates to a 1 month penalty, in which case Medicaid is not going to pay for care for that 1 month. That has increased to $10,317. So now someone can gift up to $10,317 and still only incur a 1 month penalty. So that gives us a lot of play in terms of how much we might be able to gift if we do need to do some gifting. So if we need to gift money to a child or what have you, we have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of the kind of penalties that we would be incurring. The special assistance income caps have also increased. So now the gross income cap for special assistance, so that's Medicaid, or that's the Medicaid program that pays for assisted living level of care. The gross income cap is $1,448.50 now. So that's an increase of almost $50, close to $50. And just a reminder that it's the gross income. So this is the income as it is before anything comes out. So before the Medicare payment comes out, and before if you're having taxes withheld from your Social Security check, before that comes out. So the income, the total amount of income before anything comes out, that's what Medicaid's going to be looking at to determine if you're going to be over the income cap. For a special care unit, so special assistance for memory care, that income cap has gone from $1,789.50 up to $1,831.50. So copay days, so Medicare, excuse me. So the copay has also increased by about $5.50. So yay, you get you get an extra $5.50 there. So it's now $209.50 as opposed to $204. Our office doesn't deal a whole lot with veterans benefits, but we do feel it's important to let you all know that the maximum amount for aid and attendance has also increased. So for a married veteran, the maximum amount that they can receive for aid and attendance is $27.95 a month, and so and then for a single veteran, the max amount that they would be able to receive for aid and attendance is $23.58 a month, and that's provided that they meet the other qualification requirements as far as their assets being below, I believe it's $155,000 this year. That may have also increased, and then a surviving spouse of a veteran is also their income, the max amount of pension that they can get from aid and attendance has also increased to $1,515 a month. So I just want to summarize kind of what this means for Medicaid patients in general. The gift penalty divisor is probably the biggest thing that we're seeing as the biggest increase, and the thing that will have the greatest amount of impact, because it means that we're not going to see as long of penalties, because the penalty divisor is much higher now. We're going to see some of those penalties start to reduce a little bit. Now, of course, if you have a patient who's already gifted, hundreds of thousands of dollars, then they're not going to really see much of a change in that. But for folks who have maybe only gifted about $5,000 or so, then that amounts to a real cost savings in terms of how much they would have, what their penalty would look like, and how much they will likely have to pay privately in order to cover that penalty period. The increase in the community spouse income allowance is also something that we'll see as causing a great impact for folks who are needing to qualify for Medicaid, especially for spouses who have a much lower income. So community spouses who have a much lower income, we're able to get them a little bit more. And like I said, we can only get them to the maximum amount of the income allowance if there's a mortgage that needs to be paid on the house. And then the income cap increases for special assistants. It wasn't a huge increase, but we have seen in our office where there are folks who are kind of teetering on the line of being able to be eligible. And so this might help those folks who may be on the line. It doesn't really help them if they also received a cost of living increase in their Social Security, because likely that cost of living increase keeps them over the income cap. But there are some folks who are kind of teetering, and maybe now they're eligible when they weren't before. And so I just wanted to make sure that we open the floor for any other items that you guys may have noted, or any other questions that you guys maybe had about Medicaid. We did receive quite a few questions from you all, and I wanted to clarify a couple of them. So the community spouse, we received a question about community spouse specifications as far as a 503B plan. I just wonder if that was meant to say 403B instead of a 503B. Because if it was so basically for a retirement plan in general, depending on how much is in there, that may be something that's allocated toward the community spouses, what they automatically get to keep. So that 157,920, that just may be all the community spouses resource. That may make up that countable piece that they get to keep. And then sometimes what we're able to do is maybe change it around so that it's not necessarily in a retirement plan per se, that maybe it's in some kind of an annuity that has a little bit more restrictions on it, so that part of it can maybe be non-countable for Medicaid. And so there are things that we can do there with retirement accounts that unfortunately sometimes they do incur a tax penalty, especially for the ill spouse. But for a community spouse, it may mean that entire retirement account is just part of their community spouse resource allowance. And then we also received another question about the differences in qualification requirements for MQB Medicaid and long-term care Medicaid. We're going to have Ellen follow up directly with that person on that question. Our office deals more with just the long-term care Medicaid. We don't get so much into the other types of Medicaid. But I do understand that MQB, I believe, is the Medicaid program that covers folks' Medicare premiums. If they don't have any assets, or if their income is pretty low, they might need some special assistance to cover the Medicare premiums. And so I believe that's what that program is. As far as the qualification requirements, that is more of a question for Ellen, and we'll have Ellen follow up with you directly on that. So like I said, you're getting the runner-up here. So Ellen's going to be much more the expert on those kinds of questions. All right, and I will turn it back over to Cynthia if we don't have any other questions about the changes or anything like that.
Yes. Oh, go ahead and just post your questions in the chat while we continue here, so that we can make sure at the end that we get to your questions. But I wanted Seth Cox to join us today specifically because of I asked him to share. He is the business office manager at Westchester Manor, and he's been there for almost 10 years. And just since I've been with the ElderLaw Firm, I've seen him save his patients and families so much money and time by partnering with us. So I wanted him to share a little today about who he refers and why he refers and the profile of the people he refers, because when Seth calls, we listen. So I'm going to hand it over to Seth to go ahead and unmute, and you can share your camera if you want to, and you don't have to here.
Well, good morning, and thank you for asking me to join the call today. I really appreciate it, and we like to here at Westchester Manor. We like to work with the ElderLaw Firm in any capacity. I guess first and foremost, when it comes to us and how we decide who should be referred to the ElderLaw Firm or feel like need help through the Medicaid process, it really starts on the front end. We're very fortunate to have an admission director here, Sharif Fitzgerald, who is also a social worker. And going through the admission process, seeing a person's clinical information as they're ready to transition from the hospital to long-term care, you start to get an idea, in those first few days, and certainly by the time you have a care plan meeting with social workers and other clinical folks, if someone is going to need long-term care or not. So that's kind of the first question we try to answer, try to establish, is everybody's discharge plan is to go home, just about everybody. It'd be mine. But at some point, and the sooner the better, it's good to establish, is that realistic? And if it's not realistic, how can someone afford to stay in our facility or any facility? So Cherie does a great job kind of letting us know from the point someone's coming through the door, what kind of position they're in, what do we think is going to happen over the next several weeks, how long are we going to be able to cover under Medicare, what are we going to do after Medicare if home is not really realistic. And then as the resident, goes through the process, our social workers come into play and they have care plan meetings. And, once we establish that someone needs to be here longer term beyond their Medicare coverage, then at that point, we start to try to put a plan into place. And honestly, it starts with asking a lot of tough questions. Most people don't like to talk about their finances, but if you're not willing to talk to somebody about their finances and they're not willing to give you some honest answer and feedback, it's hard to advocate for them. But once we get into the process and once they have a comfort level with you and they start to tell you the sort of assets that they have, that is how we determine could this particular person really benefit from elder law, or is this just a very simple Medicaid application?
Yep. And
Yeah.
I'm here as well. I'm Sharif Fitzgerald. And I think, as I'm talking to families, I try and get a sense of, are they married? If they're a married couple, we hand out your card right away because we know that there are so many ways, even if they're not looking for long-term care yet, that maybe they need to start thinking about if that time comes, and you all are the place that we would recommend for them to do that. Is it, even if, okay, mom's going to go home this time, what about mom and dad next time? So if they're a married couple, we tell them to call you guys right away, even if they just don't have their power of attorney and things in place, to get all those things done. And then we would refer someone to you or a family to you all if maybe it's a little more complicated. Maybe they're living in a house and there's also another property somewhere. Maybe it's a rental property, maybe it's a family property, or maybe there are there was a business, or those extra things. If we know mom's lived in an apartment or in assisted living for 10 years and doesn't own anything, is a widow, those tend to be a little more simple, and we can help them through the Medicaid process ourselves. But those married couples, the couples with property, we just know that you all will be able to help guide them a lot better than we can.
Well, that's a big help. Thank you all. And I know that I've heard great things about Westchester Manor and the partnership there. So we really appreciate that. I hope you saw in the chat you have a big fan in Sardi Izzard. She's commenting nice things about you,
Oh,
Cherie.
thank you, Sardi.
Okay, well, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing that. And let's see. Well, good. One quick question came in from Tammy. Thank you, Tammy. Mike, this is for you. What is a recommendation of Medicaid application is started, but no one has access to the bank account? What is that recommendation, Mike?
So that's actually, it's going to depend on the patient's ability to sign new documents. If they can, I would hurry up and get powers of attorney in place, because likely someone's going to need to sign off on some things as far as the application's concerned. And if they can't, then there may be a guardianship potential there, if they're just not able to sign documents. The concern that I would be most I think the thing I'd be most concerned about would be if Medicaid needed any additional information. I know that you mentioned the Medicaid application's gotten started, but if they need anything else about the bank accounts, or if there's any sort of potential gifting issues that need to be cured, or anything like that, then really there needs to be, at the very least, a power of attorney in place. And if that's just not possible, then unfortunately you're kind of in a guardianship situation, where it's going to be a little bit more difficult to try to protect any potential assets, if there are any assets that can be protected.
Okay, good. Hope that helped answer your question, Tammy. If there are any other questions, go ahead and put them down here.